Tonight, Superman comes down with a case of the sniffles, and in doing so triggers a 15-part event, because of course he does. Constantine would like to remind you that only you can cause house fires, and what do you get when you mix together Gumby and Raggedy Andy? A Batgirl villain, apparently. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 141 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and it's another week. It is just a normal, average, totally nothing special week. I kind of lie when I say that. We've got some events. We've got a really big event going on. And what kind of makes me a little bit about that is that it is a Superman event. And for anybody who knows this show, who's been watching for a while, first off, thank you. Really mean it. Keep doing that. Also, you'll know that I have kind of a little bit of a bad history when it comes to the Superman events, and mostly that's because it's almost always been Scott Lobdell in charge. And also, I think they've all had hell in it. So, already 2 points against you. But this new one, it's a group project. We've got Greg Pak in there. We've got Charles Soule in there. I'm enjoying both of their runs on their respective comics, so maybe this could be just something different. And at the end of this episode, I'm about 3 chapters into this event, which I think is going to stretch to be like 14 chapters long, so maybe they won't overstay their welcome, but I'm very tentative going into it. Regardless, we do at least need to cover it. So let me tell you all the books that are coming out this week so we can just jump right into it. This week we have, in no particular order, Superman Doomed, Action Comics, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Superboy, Batgirl, Justice League United, World's Finest, Constantine, and then we also have Batman Eternal and Future's End as our 2 weeklies that are going on. So of note out of that, Superman Doomed, Action Comics, and Superman Wonder Woman, they are all part of the event. Green Lantern Corps is also part of a Green Lantern, I still hesitate to call it an event. It is a crossover called Uprising. And not World's Finest. Justice League United. That is technically the first issue. That is issue number 1. But they had a 0 issue last month. You definitely need to hear that one first. There is absolutely no way that you can go into this issue and say, it's okay if I skip the 0 issue. Issue 1 is where you need to start at, right? No, wrong. Go back and check out the 0 issue. I will remind you when we get to that book to go do that, but do it now anyway, and then come back to this episode, please. Anyway, that's pretty much it. That's all that's going on there. Also, Superman Doomed is a one-shot, but what's weird is there's a number 2. I don't think one-shots are supposed to have a number 2, but that doesn't scream poor planning to me. No sirree. Anyway, I am really just rambling here. I don't know why, because I have nothing to say. So I'm going to shut my yap, and we're just going to jump right on into Superman Doomed. Superman Doomed number 1, written by Scott Lobdell, Greg Pak, and Charles Soule, art by Ken Lashley. This is the kickoff to the big event, also known as Superman Doomed, which is going on across Superman Action Comics, Superman/Wonder Woman, and Batman/Superman. So all that you need to know going into this is Doomsday has been around. He's been evolving, doing stuff, and I think the last time we saw him, he destroyed a honeymooning couple's island or something, and that's basically where we pick up here. So we've got some incoming jets that arrive at this honeymooning island. They've got bombs ready to drop because they know that Doomsday is here, and as they get a glimpse down on it, they see that he is absolutely massive, but not only is he causing destruction with his claws and teeth and stuff, but also just by being around these people, they're just bursting into flames. He's giving off a huge amount of radiation. So Doomsday catches sight of one of the jets, and it's all right, time to drop the bombs. So as it's about to do so, All of a sudden radio comms go silent across to the generals or whatever, and it's just like, well, we lost contact, God only knows what happened. Meanwhile, we saw what happened. One of the jets goes haywire, crashes into a few other ones, and they all start screaming out like, oh no, who can save us? And then, wouldn't you know it, Superman, who just swoops in and says, oh, don't worry, I got you. So he goes out into the ocean where the generals and stuff are on their aircraft carriers, and he sets him down. His internal monologue just like, thousands of people were on that honeymooning resort island. I just saved 3 people. Like, I am failing hardcore here. So he tells the admiral, hey, turn the ship around. Something crazy's going on back there. I'll take care of it. And he's like, bro, we're the U.S. military. When have we ever run? And as the pilots start getting medical attention, we see that their skin is just bloody and bruised and burned, and yeah, they probably didn't save anyway. So Superman rushes back to the island. He goes to face down Doomsday, but Doomsday's already gone. So he goes up to the Fortress of Solitude. He meets up with Dr. Shea Veritas, who has 100% up to this point been told to the reader that she cannot leave the middle of the earth where her base of operations is. But she's just here now. And on top of that, she says something here. Let me see what it is. She says, hey, by the way, Superman, this is the Doomsday that you're used to meeting. And we show a Doomsday back as he was in, like, the 90s. And then we show this is new Doomsday. He's bigger, faster, and stronger, too. And they kind of imply that Superman and Doomsday have fought before to the point where Superman was killed by Doomsday. But, like, they don't explicitly say that. It gets real close to saying it. They just don't. She says, and I quote, he has massive physical power, enough to kill you, but that's about the extent of it. Like, about old Doomsday, and then new one's so much cooler. So either way, Superman, his one big question is Doomsday sentient? Because I have a feeling I know what I have to do, but I don't want to have to kill a sentient thing. And Shea Veritas is basically like, look, you've already made up your mind. It doesn't matter whether or not it's sentient. It's going to destroy the entire world if you don't do that. So suck it up, Buttercup. So then we get Lana Lang. Oh, yeah, that was another thing that happened. Everybody in Smallville just dropped into a coma with absolutely no reasoning. So Lana is trying to get into Smallville, which is blocked around by military presence. It looks like she's about to, like, shoot her way inside when all of a sudden Lois Lane comes in, pulls her role as the daughter of Senator Lane, and then she just makes her way inside. And Lana manages to hitch onto the side of her car, which Lois is like, oh, okay, I'm Lois, who are you? She's like, Lana. And it's like, wow, cool. I swear we would have met before now. So then we cut over to Superman, now as Clark. He is at the Daily Planet, and he's asking Perry White for advice. Like, hey, under this metaphor of an old story that is something I have to deal with and people will get hurt, do you think it's a good idea for me to do that? And Perry's just like, you got to trust your gut. Like, yes, it's good to have some morals and whatnot. It's good to have some ethics you really stand by, but in the end, you got to trust your gut. And Perry says, as he's parting, hey, let's get you a job back here at the Daily Planet, because that's been a weird status quo for a while now. So we cut over back to Smallville. Lana and Lois are just investigating everything. Lana sees her parents are also part of the comatose group, and so she's super upset by that. And she's texting Clark basically saying, hey, I'm sure you're busy. Something's happening in Smallville. You might want to work on that. And he's like, hey, I'm sorry. Totally will. But, like, yeah, I am busy. So I promise I'll be back to deal with that soon. Also, another thing that I guess is going to play into this, Lois is possessed by Brainiac to an extent. She's talking to Brainiac constantly, and her eyes glow every once in a while. So, down in Africa, we see a bunch of wildebeest trying to cross a river, and they're getting attacked by gators, and we have some nature photographers who are like taking photos, and they're like, oh gosh, it's horrific, but it's the natural cycle. We have to let it happen. And then all of a sudden, there's a massive explosion up in the hills that just starts catching wildebeest on fire, and everyone starts like trampling each other. And we cut further down to the Victoria Falls, where John Henry Irons, aka Steel, is talking to his niece, who I'm not sure she gets a name here, Natasha. And apparently they're just on vacation. They're just having a good time. But then they see the explosion in the fire. And Steele's like, well, I got to go fight whatever that is. So he gets on a suit and he runs his way down there. Of course, it's Doomsday. So he gets in there with his big hammer, tries to smash it over Doomsday's face. Nothing. It immediately shatters. And he starts catching on fire himself. So then Wonder Woman comes in, and Steele's like, hey, don't worry about it, I got this. And she's like, nah, man, you're out. I'm going to go fight the Thing now. Besides, he first appeared in my book anyway. So Wonder Woman goes in, uses her sword on Doomsday. Doomsday's got this weird, like, purple spore thing going on every time he gets hit. But Wonder Woman manages to drive her sword into it, and it doesn't do anything to stop Doomsday, but it does, like, somewhat poison Wonder Woman. So at that point, Doomsday's attacking her. Superman comes in, heat visions, and says, okay, Diana, super cool you're here. Get the hell out of here. You got to go now. And Superman realizes that it's gotten bigger in the meantime as well. So Diana's like, nah, we're not going to do we're doing this together. It started in Superman / Wonder Woman. That's how it's going to end. So Diana, apparently she has a supersonic warrior cry. I'm sure. And it stops Doomsday in his tracks enough that he just opens up a portal into the Phantom Zone and then disappears. And Superman tries to catch him, but no use. So he's using Phantom Zone stuff to get around the world. So we cut over to DC in a special Justice League bunker, and the whole Justice League is basically talking, saying like, hey, what are we going to do? Hal's talking, he's got his own event going on up in space. He's like, I can get the Red Lanterns if you think that would help. And they're like, nah, don't worry about it. This is a super book. So then Lex Luthor pops in, and he's like, hey, Superman, look, here's the thing that you're not understanding about Doomsday. He's getting bigger and stronger because he's not just killing people and the living things around him. He's absorbing their life. And you are the biggest source of energy on the planet. So clearly it's just building up until it's ready to go against you, and you won't be able to stop it. So Lex says, leave. Go out into space. Like, it'll hopefully follow you out there. Just get away from Earth, and that'll be enough. And all the Justice League is like, why in the hell are we listening to Lex Luthor? What is this post-Forever Evil BS here? And Superman's like, no, guys, if there's even a chance that's going to work, yeah, I think it's worth taking. So he starts leaving. Batman follows up, and he's just like, look, this isn't your fault. I hope you understand that. Lex Luthor's just being a dick. And he's like, yeah, no, totally. But, like, I gotta at least give it a shot. And he hands Batman a key to the Fortress of Solitude and says, here, just in case, don't feel like it's too much. I gave Wonder Woman one as well. And speaking of which, Wonder Woman then comes in, gives him a big hug, and she's just like, look, go and kill that thing. Bring me its head. And he's like, that is the sexiest thing you've ever said. So down in India, all of a sudden Doomsday appears. Superman was going around the Earth at like supersonic speeds trying to get a drop on it as soon as it showed up. He manages to land, get in between Doomsday and a bunch of innocent people, and then the fight starts. But Superman's first thing is he uppercuts Doomsday into space. Like, he's not playing around, he's getting it out of here, and he just starts zooming Doomsday up all the way to Venus. And as they land on Venus, he manages to get some pretty heavy hits off on Doomsday, and he thinks he won. He looks down at Doomsday's charred corpse as his heat vision just absolutely annihilated him. So then Superman decides, well, I did it. Doomsday's stuck on Venus, and he's not going to be a problem. So he comes back down to Earth, lands in Smallville. Mind you, though, he's got a bunch of these, like, purple spores around his head now. And so he looks and he's like, hey, Lana, sorry I'm late. And then, of course, a portal opens up next to him and Doomsday comes out because, of course, the fight wasn't done. So now they're in Smallville. Clark does his best to hold off Doomsday, but he is getting a major thrashing. But finally, he just has enough, and you see something in him snap, and he grabs hold of Doomsday and literally tears him in half. And as he does so, all these purple spores get released, and Superman doesn't want it to infect anybody around in Smallville, so he inhales all of them, and he holds them inside himself, and he's like, all right, I did it. And then he just collapses down onto the ground. To be continued. in part one of part one, because they broke the event down into sub-chapters. That's going to be over in Action Comics with the infected part of the story. So, there's a lot of moving parts here. It does feel... I like the fact that it is everything that's been going on in all the books coming together. I like that we have Lois as the Brainiac stuff is being brought up. We got the Smallville coma stuff coming up. We got Doomsday. He's been appearing all over the books. It feels like this is an actual proper event that we have been building to, and it makes sense that it deserves something like a one-shot just to be able to get everything going. Some major start that everything else will just filter out of. My only problem I have with it is that it feels a bit too overstuffed, because obviously this is where they wanted to get to. For anyone who doesn't know, the Doom storyline, Infected is the name of the next chapter. That should be pretty obvious what's happening here, but it feels like all that other stuff of the comatose Smallville thing and Lois being a part of Brainiac and like everything that was set up beforehand as well just kind of feels like it was moved off to the side because we really had to rush through this killing of Doomsday thing. And I'm not saying that it's not good. Like I think it's very well told here, but I do kind of wish that maybe this had its own like little mini arc. I mean, it's Superman versus Doomsday for the first time maybe in this continuity. I think that's worth spending some time on. So, yeah, overall, I liked it. I'm not going to say I didn't. I'll probably give this one... I'll give this one like an 8. I think it has a lot of promise. I like the ideas that it's playing with, and I look forward to seeing where the rest of the story goes. But I do wish that we could have just spent a little bit more time on Superman versus Doomsday, rather than just a few punches and then he rips him in half. Action Comics number 31, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder, Cameron Stewart, and Rafa Sandoval. So this is part 1 of chapter 1 of Superman Doomed, aka Infected, and we open up with what I assume will be the end, which is Superman looking full Doomsday in fire and standing atop human skeletons saying, I'm going to save you all. When the worst threats comes, I'll save you, save you, save you, kill you. And then all of a sudden he snaps out of it. Turns out it was just him dreaming after he killed Doomsday in Superman Doomed. And as he comes to, a bunch of people, because he's down in Smallville, rush towards him, and are basically like, Superman, hey man, you cool? But before anybody can get to him, Wonder Woman comes down, grabs him, and just like, yeah, we'll take care of him, thanks, bye, and flies off. So alongside with them is Cyborg, Martian Manhunter, and Lex Luthor. And they start, and also Flash is there running alongside, and they've taken care of Superman, they're running him off. Superman's internal monologue, meanwhile, is like, stupid Lex Luthor is here in this stupid post-Forever Evil timeline. Like, this sucks. I hate that guy. He's the worst. Why is he here? And he looks over at Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman's like, okay, here's the thing. We're good. We got it all settled. You took care of Doomsday. You got a lot of, like, grime and blood on you, but, like, we can take care of that. And then Lex is like, Pshaw, you're coming with me, man. We're going to quarantine. We need to know what you might have been infected with. And then Superman beats the ever-loving crap out of Lex Luthor, punches him in the face, breaks his arm in half, throws him into the ground. And then he's like, oh, hold on, I was hallucinating again. Just a dream. But God, that felt good. So Wonder Woman notices something's wrong, and she's like, hey, you're going to be fine. Lex can't be trusted. We're not going to put you in quarantine. We're good. So Superman just flies off ahead of everyone else to the point where Lex can't keep up. So Batman, meanwhile, is down in Smallville. He's looking around at the wreckage where Doomsday was killed. And Batman also realizes something was wrong. He's like, hey, Superman, talk to me. And Superman just says something's off. And Batman's like, say no more. I got this. You just get away. So he finds some weird metal part in the middle of the fight with some blood on it. And he just walks away and decontaminates the whole area with a big explosion. So, meanwhile, we're in Alaska, and this is where Clark has retreated to. He's got Krypto by his side, as Krypto is taking out some caribou just for the fun of it. And we see Clark is basically just resting. He's just like, I don't feel great, but I'm just going to go to sleep. And when the sun comes up, I'll get some charge back and I'll feel great. And we see Crypto's bringing him like the leg of a caribou, trying to help him up. And he's like, oh, that's a good boy. You're a good boy, Crypto. And he realizes that, like, if something was wrong, Crypto would recognize it and he would be like growling at Cal. But he's not. He's fine. So then all of a sudden I don't know, it's a hunting plane flies by and it starts shooting wolves. And Superman is just like, I'm already pissed. I hate the fact that this is happening. So he just flies up, grabs the guy's gun out of his hand. The guy gets pissed off about this and shoots Superman in the face. And he's like, to hell with that. That's an actual quote. And rips the airplane in half and causes it to crash to the ground. He does save the people inside, but the airplane was completely totaled. And he's like, all right, I know. It's a dream. I'll wake up. But it isn't. He actually did this. And he's like, oh, that felt good. So we cut back over to, it's got a whole long name, but it's Steele's Labs. It's where he's doing his stuff. And Sam Lane is there saying like, hey man, we saw the recordings and stuff of what happened against your fight in Doomsday. You stood against him for 23 seconds. That's more than any human could like ever do. You are incredibly gifted and strong there. And Steele's like, hey man, Superman did all the heavy lifting there. And Lane's not letting him not take the credit. He's like, look. We are looking into that. We want to know, like, are you willing to work alongside us? And we see Steele still recovering from his injuries. Takes a dip into some liquid steel alloy, something that it's just the new look for him. Rather than it being a makeshift thing of parts or whatever, he now has a body of coated steel. So Sam Lane calls him in just being like, hey, how about you come back and you help us protect people? And he says, excuse me, I was around in Morrison's Action Comics run where you tortured Superman against my wishes. So no, I don't think that's what's going to happen. But then Sam Lane pulls out a phone and says, Superman's sick. He inhaled some stuff that was inside Doomsday. You may be the only person who could get to him. Not as like a threat, but as a friend. So how about we go with that route? And you can bring him back here. And Steele points out that this place was built to hold criminals. And we showed 2 criminals in here. I don't recognize them, but I guess they're here. So we go back to Smallville. Lois is still trying to pull some stuff on what's going on here and what sort of information they can get, especially about the Doomsday stuff. And Lana's kind of just like, all right, look, this is stupid. I don't want to be in like these hazmat suits anymore. If this place were dangerous, Superman wouldn't let us stay here. So she takes off her hazmat suit and Lois is like, okay, all right, you got some balls. I'm down with that. And so Lana starts trying to help out around Smallville, trying to get stuff back up after the Doomsday fight. And she's saying like, I believe in you, Clark. Just keep doing what you got to do. So meanwhile, at the Fortress of Solitude, Clark's banging on the door, but it's not recognizing him. It recognizes his voice, but not his DNA. And he's like, why is that? And he looks down at his hand and sees some bony protrusions. And he's like, that's not good. And then he looks over at Crypto, who's now got red eyes and is growling at him. And he's like, that's also not good. So he's like, all right, I see where this is going. I don't know what to do next, but I'll figure it out. And he says, after all, I'm Superman. Whenever there's a threat or something like that, I am going to be the one that saves everybody. And we see he returns to Metropolis back in his Clark Kent guise, and he has this specter of Doomsday over top of him. I'm down with it. I like this idea. I like how this era of Superman 10 years removed was all about like he's too grimdark or whatever, but this is honestly the first time that I feel like it actually has gotten there. Like obviously he's had some issues before this, but this is the first time it feels like they're really leaning in and saying, no, it's because of the Doomsday virus or whatever it's going to be called. Like that's what's causing this grimdark. As for the story itself, it's fine. It's good. It definitely feels more the setting up stuff. I don't quite understand what's going on in Smallville with the Lois and Lana stuff, because it feels like Lois is there for some sort of story, obviously, but there's something to do with Brainiac as well. So I don't know. They could flesh that out a bit better. But everything else, I'm sold on. I'm liking it. Yeah, not much more to say beyond that. I guess ratings-wise, I'd give this one... I'll give this one an 8. I think that they did a solid job of nailing the slow descent with Superman here. Obviously, it might be a bit faster than some people would like, but I think that it's doing a good job of showing him just like still being in the mindset of Superman has to save everyone, while at the same time clearly being in the wrong about how to do it. And I think that's a hard balance to strike, but they did a very good job. Superman Wonder Woman number 8, written by Charles Soule, art by Tony S. Daniel. This is part 2 of Infected, which is the first chapter of Superman Doomed. This is a very confusing way to talk about this book, but regardless, last time over in Action Comics, he was getting sicker, and that was basically all that happened. This issue opens up with Wonder Woman knocking on Clark's apartment door, trying to see if he's home. We see that his doorknob is just like rattling and also somewhat dented, and just like, okay, well, I've got a key to this place, so let's see what's going on. And as she steps inside, it's a wreck. The whole room is torn apart, and sitting ominously in a shadowy armchair across the room is this very dark figure. And it's just like, hey, Diana, I'm not ready for visitors yet, but yeah, you got my key, so I guess come on in. And she's like, Clark, you're sounding weird. What are you doing? She's like, I'm not okay. And he's like calling her out that she's scared, and that's when her natural accent comes out, and he can hear it now because he knows that he's scaring her. And he stands up from the chair and says, maybe we can have a little fun. And you see these giant doomsday-esque protrusions coming out of his body. So then we go to the offices of ClarkKetropolis.com, which apparently there are offices now. So they broke the story about Superman and Wonder Woman kissing. Now they have a full staff and everything like that. And they're trying to get some info on whatever's going on Doomsday, I guess. Kat's trying to call up Clark to get any sort of information from him. He's off the grid. And then her secretary comes in saying, hey, Clark's girlfriend is here. And so we see this is all 8 hours earlier, where Diana came and it's just like, oh yeah, me and Clark are really on the down low. It's not surprising he didn't mention me. No big deal. He likes his privacy and whatnot. Speaking of his privacy, would you happen to know where I could find him? Have you spoken to him at all recently? And she's just like, no, not at all. I mean, sure, there was that one thing that happened. She's like, oh, please share. And apparently just like a few hours ago, he came in, and Kat started chewing him out for not carrying his weight for ClarkKetropolis.com, which, yeah, I don't blame him. And we see him trying to like hide these bony protrusions on his body. And as Kat's like chewing him out, saying like, hey, we broke that story about Superman. And he's just like, yeah, maybe Superman didn't want you to break that story, Kat. Maybe you should respect people's privacy. You suck. I hate you. And he just storms out of the office. And she's like, okay, all right, well, I'll find out where he is and I'll talk to him. So, cut back to present. Wonder Woman's trying to reach out to Clark and saying like, hey, are you, like, Batman said something? He's like, oh yeah, Batman. Batman doesn't even have powers. Why do we even care about Batman? Batman's nothing like us. It's like, okay, well, Clark, you're sick. We think you might be infected with something. And it's like, yeah, I know I'm infected with something. I know you guys think that I'm this stupid idiot with muscles, but like, I'm actually pretty smart. And yes, of course I know. But like, here's the thing that you gotta understand. And he takes Wonder Woman's lasso and starts like pulling it tight into his hands over and over again. He's just like, look, I know that this is going to end up with me as Doomsday. I can see that happening. I know what's happening here. So the only thing I need from you right now is to kill me before this gets worse. And he takes the lasso of truth and wraps it around his neck. He's like, do it now while I will still let you do it. So 6 hours earlier, we cut to Lois is driving, I guess, into Metropolis or out of Smallville, something like that. She apparently stole something from the military. And as such, she's trying to call up Clark in order to get to Perry and say something, or sorry, misread that. Diana is calling Lois to get information about Clark, and she's like, sorry, bad time, but by the way, get Perry, he could get me some help out here because I'm about to be stopped by the military. And so she's ordered out of the car for stealing stuff. And that's when Diana just shows up, and she's like, oh, wow, you were like really close by, huh? And she's like, yep. And then she starts having a telepathic conversation with one of the soldiers, because right now in continuity, Diana is the god of war. And as such, she's able to just command soldiers, I guess. And so she's having a conversation with Lois being like, whoa, what are you doing? Why were you arrested? And she's just like, oh, well, I didn't do anything. Meanwhile, the soldier's like, she broke into a military mainframe and she has weird glowing eyes sometimes. And Diana's like, okay, let her out. And Lois is like, they're not just going to listen to you. And they do. And she's like, I don't know what you pulled, but that's like crazy. So at that point, Diana says like, hey, do you know anything about Clark? Now that I got you out of that, can you do me a solid and just tell me? And she's just like, oh, yeah. Are you talking about last night? Because, yeah, I don't blame you for wanting to get that figured out. And we don't see it immediately as to what happened, but he apparently, like, came on to Lois to some extent. He called her up and it sounded like a drunk dial, but, like, he said something. So 2 hours before current day, we see Batman flying into Metropolis, and he's just basically saying, all right, Superman, no one's seen him around. I know where he is. I'm going to go deal with him. He wouldn't have gone to the fortress, and he wanted to feel, if he is infected, he's going to want to feel human. So it's either going to be Metropolis or Smallville. He's not going back to Smallville after what just happened, so he's clearly at his home in Metropolis. And as he's saying all this to Alfred on the comms, Wonder Woman lands on the front of his jet, and she's like, we need to talk. I don't know where Superman is. And Batman's like, okay, hold on. Does it sound like he's been like aggressive or whatnot recently? And she's like, yeah, how'd you know? And he's like, I took a vial of his blood and I compared it with a vial of Doomsday's blood. I can't tell the difference between the two. He's got some level of Doomsday in him, and it's affecting him significantly. And one of them's like, is this like contagious? Are we all at risk? And he's like, no. If anybody human came down with this, they'd be dead in a heartbeat. Superman's the only one that's able to last as long as he has, because he's Superman, you know? And Wonder Woman's like, okay, well, where do we find him? And he's like, oh, have you checked his home? And he's like, yeah, I checked the fortress. And it's like, no, his home. You do know he's a person too, right? And she's like, no, I was kind of forgetting that actually. Sorry. So Wonder Woman flies off, goes to his home, and that's where we got up to now. So we see Wonder Woman is declining to kill Clark. He throws the first punch, saying, I'm not going to give you a choice in this. And so all the windows just blast out of his apartment building, and Batman flies in to go help. And she's like, nope, go home, go away. I've got this. Just evacuate the building. I'll take care of this. And Batman tries to fight against her, and she's just like, no, seriously, I got this. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever, just save him. So at that point, Wonder Woman says, look, if things get worse, then yes, I will make sure that you cannot hurt anybody. But we're not at that point yet, because you're Superman, man. Batman says the only reason that you are able to survive against this at all is because you have, like, control over this. You mentally can stop this. So just fight against it. Remember who you are, Kal-El. And so all of a sudden Superman starts shouting and yelling, and he busts all the windows in Metropolis with his shouts, and it looks like he manages to regress. And he's like, hey, I said some messed up stuff there, Diana. I'm very sorry. And she's like, oh, shush, I know it's not you. And he's like, right. Here's the thing, though. I don't know how long I can keep that off anymore. So that's the issue. I like it. I think it's a nicely written one. It's doing a good job of not only furthering the story, but also making it true to the title itself of Superman/Wonder Woman. I like when these books are not just beholden to telling the next chapter of the story. It actually feels like it's natural for the book that it's in as well. So all in all, art-wise, looks fantastic as well. I like... Okay, I'm 50-50 on the look of Doomsday Superman, at least at whatever level he was at here, because they aren't really bony protrusions. They're more just like bumps, and his skin is just gray. And I don't know. I would rather it be the more bony protrusion stuff rather than just his skin is expanding to deal with the bones not coming out, I guess. But overall, it's a solid issue. I'll give this one... I'll give it an 8. It's 7.5 feels a bit too harsh for me, so I will go ahead and give it an 8. But I will say it's being able for him to just mentally regress the illness, while super cool for Superman, does kind of take away a bit of the tension of it. It makes it feel like, well, is there any real stakes here if Superman can just think it away? Obviously, it's not permanent, but like, what's to stop him from just always doing that, you know? But no, it's still a solid 8 right now, as long as they don't overplay that card. Green Lantern Corps number 31, written by Van Shenzen, art by Bernard Chang. This is part 2 of Uprising, and after last issue of Green Lantern, all of the phony lanterns that were actually Durlans were discovered, and all of their rings went off to seek their true owners. So this issue opens up pretty much immediately afterwards. The ancient Durlans are telling the Coons, hey, we gotta bail, man. Like, all of this stuff, we got to kill all of the Green Lanterns that we have hostage right now. And the Coons are like, whoa, hold on. Like, what's the big deal? You guys say you have all these plans, and yet you want to kill one of our major bargaining pieces? And the Durlans are like, all of those rings are currently traveling the galaxy and are going to show up on those people's fingers right now. And the Coon Warrior's like, hey, okay, fair enough. Let's go kill them all. So, down in the cells of this planet, we get just a huge list of Green Lanterns, and the guards start making their way cell to cell until eventually we reach one named Zipf. I'm not going to remember their names, but regardless, he taunts one of the guards saying like, oh yeah, you want to do it with a gun? I thought you warriors would be able to do things up close and dirty like that. And he's like, oh yeah, totally, I could do that. So then the Green Lantern takes the guy's gun and knife, and he manages to fight off a few other ones. And they basically stage a full revolt. So they use the guns that they've got to free one of the other ones named Turret, who is just a powerhouse. He's just an absolute monster, and he just starts tearing through all these guards and other warriors. We see one of them is attacked by the guards, but before anything can be done, before he's even down on the ground, all the rings come down, and they make their way to all the rest of the Green Lanterns who were in their cells, and immediately it's hell on earth. All the firepower just comes out, and the Green Lanterns start attacking. There is one of them who was killed beforehand when the guards were making their way through, and nobody even knows his name. They're like, oh, it sucks, but like we just didn't know him, but his ring goes off, and it's like, all right, but we'll avenge him regardless. So a lot of this issue is just, and then the fight keeps going on, and that is more or less the case here. But as the fight is going down beneath, we see a bunch of the Coon warriors up top are trying to make their way down, and they are stopped by John Stewart, Fatality, and all the other Green Lanterns that were with him. And they're saying, hey, we know there are prisoners on this planet. Where are they? And the warrior's just like, yeah, they're dead. We've already killed all of them. And one of the other lanterns, I think Aricia, is like, this metal plate has a whole bunch of ring-sized holes in it from when the rings pierced it. I think they're down there. So John's like, all right, let's go help. So they make a drill to drill down to help out the other lanterns. The Durlans who were there transform into these giant stone monsters, which John points out how heavy they are and that the floor they're on is unstable. So they just immediately collapse through the floor, and they aren't even like part of the fight. Some other Durlans turn into some giant, I don't know, Yeti-looking creatures, best way I could describe it. And just like, oh, you lanterns are brave, but bravery doesn't win battles. So another lantern comes in and just beats the other like snot out of this Durlan. Like, again, a lot of this is just, and then they team up and keep fighting. So that keeps going. John is just like, hey, everybody, let's go. We gotta get out of here. We're going back to the planet. Whoever's out of a charge, partner up with somebody who still has some. Let's go. And someone says, hold up. We freed all these people, but there's someone way, way, way deep down in like the bottom of this place that didn't get free. We got to go get them. And John's like, I mean, that might not even be a lantern, but yeah, they don't deserve to be like this. So we see the Durlans go to their stockpile of radioactive material, and they're like, all right, we're kind of on our back foot here. We don't have much more of a plan. Down all of our radioactive goo and transform into the craziest stuff we can. And we see there are 3 of them. One of them transforms into this weird, spiky, metal-looking thing. And the other 2 turn into these weird frog-looking monsters. And as the Green Lanterns make their way down into the depths of this prison area, they come across the frog-looking monster ones. They try using their rings powers against it. Turns out these things can just absorb the light spectrum and turn it against the Lantern Corps. So at that point, John's like, okay, but like we don't even need to go to where they are. We just need to keep going down. So he just drills a hole through the floor and they keep going down. And finally, they reach a cell that is made of inertron and lead. And they're like, all right, something's in there. We just got to break through the lock. So the one smart lantern starts picking that. Meanwhile, the other Durlans, they're just like, no, swear, do not let him out. And then they get some heat vision to the eyes. And John's like, what in the hell's in there? And stumbling out from the darkness, saying that he thought the Green Lantern Corps forgot about him, is Sodom Yacht. I don't know this guy, but they do a good job of introducing him, where immediately Aricia is like, oh my god, I knew you were always alive. And he's just like, hey, Aricia. It's nice to see you. So the last remaining Durlan gets laser beamed straight through the chest. He's not okay. And Sodom Yacht's like, yeah, hey guys, let's get out of here now. I really want to leave. And John explains that Sodom Yacht is a Daxamite. He was abducted by a mind-controlling psychopath. They thought he was just gone, but now he's essentially a Superman on the Green Lantern Corps. So yeah, they're happy about this. So they make their way off the planet, and Sodom Yacht says, like, yeah, look, they experimented on me. They found a way to take my ring and use it for their own purposes, but like the only thing they were really asking about, it wasn't anything about the core, it was about my home planet. That's what they were more concerned with. And John immediately is like, oh god, they don't care about Mogo. They're going to try to duplicate the bodies of all the Daxamites and build an army of Supermen. Well, crap. And that's where the issue leaves off. So yeah, I mean, that's, as much as I think that a lot of it is just, and then they keep fighting, it doesn't ever hold on it too long that I just feel like I'm flipping through pages. It's always like one page of, and then they were fighting, followed by a page of story progression. And then it keeps going throughout that. So it is a little bit of a lighter issue. It's a very fast read, but I don't think that it's boring at any given point. I think that if you just kind of skip every other page, then you're getting a very in-depth story here as to like all these things and the things they're trying to stop them, what these prisoners were doing, and then ending up with Sodom Yacht and the furthering of whatever uprising's going to be. So all in all, I think this one's a solid, I'd say a solid 7. It's just missing, I think the 7.5 is only because as much as I think they did a good job of introducing Sodom Yacht, I think it could have used a little bit more foreshadowing, just anything beforehand to say that there was a person deep down in the cell, or that Mogo was not the planet that they were like most focused on. Just, this feels very much a left turn out of nowhere, and while that's fine for like storytelling purposes of keeping readers on their toes, in terms of a twist, it just feels completely out of nowhere and a little bit cheap. But 7 just because I think it's fun. Batgirl number 31, written by Gail Simone, art by Fernando Pasarin. So last issue honestly doesn't matter. I'm just realizing that now. Absolutely nothing in that really matters. So, picking up on this issue, we open up in the Carter Resnick Foundation, which, as far as I can tell, is just a... You know the lab from 28 Days Later that was doing just like random bio tests on like chimps and stuff? It's that. It's like a biopharmaceutical company or something. And we see Alicia, which is Batgirl's roommate, and a bunch of her friends are activists. And they have broken into this place, but immediately, before the issue begins, they have been attacked by something that has attacked their friend Terry and just swooped him away. And apparently Terry was hardcore, so they are especially scared of whatever's going on now. And as they are bundling up, trying to make their way through this building, all of a sudden they make their way into a bathroom, and they see whatever this thing is. It's called Ragdoll, as we find out later. It like can contort itself into horrific shapes, and it just crawls underneath the bathroom stall door and just like, hello everybody, it's me. So Alicia kicks it in the face, and it's just like, oh, that was rude, I didn't like that. So they run out, they do the best they can to get away. Ragdoll continues to give chase, and apparently Ramon, one of the guys, is just like, I'll fight it off, you guys get to safety, and she's like, no, don't, but, you know, they do. So we cut over to Gotham Hospital, where Barbara is visiting, and she's like, man, I hate this place. I hate this place so much. It's where I woke up after I was shot, and then I've had like 3 or 4 different showdowns here. But mainly right now is my kinda boyfriend is here, Ricky, and he said that he needed to talk to me, so I might be about to get dumped. And as she's entering the building, she gets a very weird vibe, and we see somebody is taking pictures from afar. So as she goes into the hospital, she meets Ricky's mom. Ricky's mom just has like a crock pot full of tamales, and she's like, here you go, you're so skinny, eat up. And she's like, thanks, I guess. So she goes in, she talks to Ricky, and Ricky is immediately like, hey, it's so good to see you, I'm so happy. And Barbara's like tearing up because she realizes that Ricky's in here because her dad shot him, and so she feels kind of responsible. And that's when Ricky's like, hey, I do need to talk to you about something serious, though, and it's going to be hard for me to say. And she's like, oh, God, you're dumping me, aren't you? And he's like, what? No, totally not. Look, a lawyer came to talk to me. I'm suing your dad because he shot me without reason. So I just wanted you to be the first to know there. That's going on. And immediately Barbara's like, what? What? And so she just storms out, taking the tamales with her. And so then we cut back over to the place, whatever it's called, the biopharmaceutical place. And so we see Ragdoll has taken out Ramon, the next guy, choking him to death. And he calls up his employer and says like, hey, yeah, I know, you said no witnesses. There's 2 left, just letting you know the status of all that. So as Barbara gets back in the call, she gets a call from Alicia saying, hey, I didn't know who else to call. Clearly 911 wasn't an option, so she decided her roommate. That makes more sense. And she explains the whole situation, saying that they broke into this bio-research place, and there's someone here, it's killing them. Oh, God, it's so horrible, blah, blah, blah. And Barbara's like, okay, I have a friend who can help. Just stay put and tell me where you are. So she gets into Batgirl gear. She immediately scales up the building, cuts a hole in through the window, and it's just like, okay, I know that they were activists, and I know this place isn't cool, but like, I just have to focus on saving them right now. That's the number one thing. And as she starts going through the building, we get a flashback to 2 nights ago in a bar where all of Alicia's friends are being spoken to by Michael, who, for anyone who doesn't remember Michael, he is one of the goons for Nightfall, aka the rich woman who thinks that she's cleaning up Gotham. And so this guy, he pulls out a little canister and says, look, if you guys really want to get against that bio-research company, this is like the mother of all stink bombs. You go in there, they won't be able to do their work for weeks. So to make sure you go in there and you pull it and you get out of there super quick. So they say, okay, but what's in it for you? And she's like, oh, this is for the people of Gotham. Screw that place, right? So we see Barbara still trying to track down where Alicia is. It's just her and this one other girl now, and the girl is just sobbing like crazy. Ragdoll shows up and just being like, hey, I'm here to finish what I started and kill you guys. And so Alicia sends the girl away, whatever her name is, and as she leaves, the girl's like, wait, hold on, and they share a nice, passionate kiss. And Ramon's like, oh, that's adorable. Or not Ramon. Ragdoll's like, oh, that's adorable. So the one girl goes running. Alicia's ready to put up a fight, and she's just like, do you even know who you're working for? They do all these horrible things. They steal water. They spill toxic waste. They experiment on monkeys. And Ragdoll pauses. He's like, I'm sorry, what did you say about monkeys? And then he's like, all right, whatever. The job's a job. I got to do this. So he lunges after Alicia. She uses some spray paint to like blind him for a second, but it barely does anything as he starts contorting and like choking her out. So then Batgirl shows up, lays the hurt on Ragdoll, and just like slams his face into a railing. And she's like, okay, I might have gone a little bit overboard there. But Ragdoll immediately gets back up and he's just like, nah, it's no big deal. I'm almost literally made out of rubber. Nothing you can do can hurt me. So he starts constricting around Batgirl, and Batgirl's like, all right, none of my normal moves are going to work, so instead we're going to get a little bit creative here. And she just starts throwing punches into his face, using whatever leverage she can, and just like, all right, well, are we good? Are you done? Do I have to keep punching you? And he's just like, hey, I'm trying to do a good thing for once, and you're getting in my way. And she's like, you murdered people. And he's like, yeah. Or, sorry, he says, no, I didn't. I only mostly murdered them. They'll be fine. So, turns out, he didn't actually kill them, despite the fact he said he did earlier. And then he reveals that these people, Alicia's friends, are terrorists. And she's like, what? No, we're not. We're just going to drop a stink bomb. And Ragdoll's like, whoever told you that was a stink bomb's a friggin' liar. That thing's full of nerve gas. Like, it would kill you and everyone else in this building. And she's like, oh my God, jeez, take it. I don't want it. So at that point, Ragdoll's like, all right, look, clearly we've all been misinformed here a little bit on things. I think you guys just leave, and therefore no big deal that you didn't set it off. And I need to go talk to my employer about this monkey business. So they just go their separate ways, and Batgirl carries out Alicia, and she's just like, Batgirl, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I'm not a terrorist, I swear. And she's like, don't worry about it. It's a weird night for everybody. So we see Nightfall is upset that, well, not upset. She's hearing about the fact that the nerve gas didn't go off, and she's just like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. By the way, this whole building was apparently owned by Mr. Rain, who was a villain that I'm pretty sure was only introduced in the last annual of Batgirl, which was like 2 weeks prior to this. I don't know if he's going to be a recurring thing, but he's there. So at that point, the thing that Nightfall's more upset by is somebody tipped off somebody that it was nerve gas, and therefore there's a traitor in her midst. And then we see Ragdoll going to the guy who employed him for that job, saying, you didn't say anything about monkeys being experimented on. I like monkeys. And so he kills this guy. The end. I don't know how I feel about all these one-offs in Batman or in Batgirl. Like, yes, we are still clearly moving towards a final plot here. Gail Simone's run on this, I think, wraps up in like 4 issues time. But I don't know. I as much as I really, really enjoyed that vampire stuff that was going on like 2-3 months ago, I just kind of want something that feels like it has a bit more significance. I just want to feel like we're moving towards something. Clearly, we're doing something with Nightfall moving forward from here. We've set up that there's a traitor in her midst, so we'll see what that's all about. But I don't know. I feel like with all of these single stories, it doesn't feel like there's any sort of forward motion for the character. There's no real arc here, and there hasn't been for about, I feel like, almost 6 months now. So, yeah, I'm just going to put this as I'll put it at a 6.5 because I was at least somewhat entertained by Ragdoll, but I need a little bit more than, especially because they're just throwing out that Alicia is like this activist to the point of like eco-terrorism now, which I get that she's kind of been a little on that, but never to this degree. So, yeah, it just needed a little bit more work for me. Maybe we could have had this be, over the course of the past, like, 6 months, a bunch of loosely connected stories, like something in the background going on, but, more than what we've currently got. So I'll give this one, 6.5. Superboy number 31, written by Aaron Kuder, art by Jorge Jimenez. So last issue, Superboy arrived back in present day and then was picked up by a Star Labs group who's like, hey, we know you're not normal Superboy. And so now he goes by John and they're trying to help him. So this issue picks up in Star Labs and it's kind of just like a recap page to start where they're like, Superboy is experiencing some weird genetic anomalies and also time anomalies, and he's just kind of tired as well. But we can go ahead and do our best to help him. And they mentioned that they had seen only one case of cellular degradation similar to John's like this before, and they're importing him to the facility. So we see an ambulance making its way across New York, and the ambulance drivers are just saying like, man, that thing we got in the back sure is monstrous. Like, this is how you know real monsters exist, So they go and they drop it off and they leave it with some Star Labs guys. Meanwhile, as they are walking it down to the back, we see Superboy is in some sort of weird containment field and he starts coming to. And he's like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, dude, we left you in your room last night. And then when we checked on you this morning, you didn't even make it to bed. Like, you just collapsed on the floor. So we are putting you in a neutrino shower, which will help your cells recover from the random overheating from tachyon pulses. And they literally admit that this is all just techno jargon that doesn't, like, they have absolutely no reason to believe any of this will work, but it is, so whatever, they're just going to keep running with it. So then the big main scientist guy comes out and he's like, all right, so here's the thing, your cells are currently having a problem holding a charge without overheating you, so we're going to give you a literal battery pack. And he holds up this new costume variation that is just a battery pack. That's literally, it's just hooked onto his back there. So meanwhile, whatever this creature is inside of this cell, two of the guards are looking at it and they decide to snap a picture with it and just like, oh yeah, no, totally, this is awesome. And one of the other guards tries goading the other and to be like, hey, you should, it's totally under like hibernation or whatnot. You should open it up and take a picture with it. And he's just like, yeah, no, totally. This is a big monster. It'd be awesome. So we see Superboy puts on the battery pack suit and he's just like, all right, this feels stupid. And he's like, yeah, totally. Look, here's the thing, Superboy, that you should know about Star Labs is that we are doing this for your betterment. We're not trying to get anything out of you. However, you do have some talents. And we were hoping that maybe you would meet with our benefactor, the one who's like agreeing to heal you because he has some propositions for you. And he's like, fine, sure, whatever. All of a sudden the alarms start going off and Guardian is immediately like, all right, I'm going. Everyone get down to your lockdown facilities. We got to go. And so Guardian starts running in. Superboy's like, I'm going to go help. Clearly I'm not just going to stay back away from a fight. And the guy's like, wait, no, John, or not the guy, the girl that's into him is just like, wait, John, this thing that was being transported is a monster. You're in no shape for this. And John's like, he's not the only one. So some big booms happen, and then all of a sudden, busting into the room is Parasite, saying, I feel like chicken tonight. So we see Guardian jumps in, just headlong. He doesn't care for his safety at all, and he goes up against Parasite, knocks him down on his back, and then Parasite just headbutts him into the ground. And he's like, all right, well, that's enough of that. So then Superboy runs in. He tries to do an attack, and Parasite just swats him away. Just like, nah, I've fought against actual Superman before. You aren't even worth, like, dessert to me. But then he turns over to the young girl who likes him, and she just, like, freaks out. She starts running away from Parasite. Superboy looks down at his reflection in the mirror and sees a different version of Superboy telling him to get up, and he's like, all right, don't know what that is, but that thing, as powerful as it isn't a fighter, so I just need to, like, I can outdo him from, like, a fighting standpoint. So he gets the girl out of the way. Her name is Needy. That's it, Needy. And so gets her out of the way, and then John charges in and starts using his TK powers against Parasite to just straight up grapple with him. And he's like, all right, maybe this wasn't the best idea. But for whatever reason, Superboy starts draining Parasite. And he's like, what? Hold on, you can't, that's my trick. You can't do that against me. And he's like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm not actually draining it out of him to the point where he's like shriveled up and normal. I'm draining it to the point where me and him are evenly matched. So he had a lot more power than Superboy beforehand, but now they've become equalized. And because of that, Superboy is going to be able to use his TK ability, which is something that Parasite just doesn't have, period. And he uses it to slice off Parasite's arms and legs. So, yeah, that seemed to work. And then the final page we get here is Superboy being like, okay, I did it, but during all of that, when I was like getting up and all that, I came to the realization that the other Superboy that he's been seeing is real. It's actually something, it's not just a hallucination, it's a real thing. And this connection that he has to it, he has to be able to track it down and find where this real Superboy is, because they can heal each other. So that's a turn I didn't see coming. I thought for sure it was just going to be the hallucinations of Superboy's past, but nope, turns out they're real, and he's got to go become whole again. I mean, okay, I'm not against it. I'm honest to God, I've been so disappointed with every continuous arc of Superboy. Like, there's never been any point in this since issue 1 where I've been like, yes, finally, the Superboy I've wanted all along. Like, it's just been continuous of worse and worse and worse. Coming into this final arc here, because the series is wrapping up in like 3 issues time, it's not bad. It's at this point, it's not bad. It's not any worse than anything we've had before. If anything, I think it's slightly better. But I do think it is shackled by what we have been forced to do beforehand. They've done a great job at shaking off a lot of those shackles, but there is still some there. More importantly, the fact that weird time shenanigans with Superboy, and he's forced to say that he's still evil, despite the fact that they don't want to do that at all. So yeah, it's a lot going on there. All in all, I think this one's still probably, I'd say 7. 7 seems fair to me. It's like I said, it's the best that it has been, and I at least enjoyed reading this issue. I do think that with some of these new characters they've got, they could probably do a better job of reintroducing those each issue, but I mean, it wasn't awful by any means. So yeah, 7 for this, and we'll see what it means that there are multiple Superboys somewhere out in the ether. Justice League United #1, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Mike McKone. This is not the first issue. There was a 0th issue, and it's definitely required. So, last issue, Animal Man, Green Arrow, Martian Manhunter, and Stargirl got approached by Adam Strange, who's just a regular dude, to help save his girlfriend/student named Alana. Turns out Alana was abducted by aliens, and now they're fighting a giant genetic freak monster. That's a whole thing. Also, Alana almost kind of escaped, but then was stopped by new Lobo, who's now fighting Hawkman. So we open with that part, and Hawkman is challenging Lobo. In the Hawkman book, they established that there was this long-standing war of Thanagarians versus Zarnians versus Daemonites. So they already have bad blood, and Lobo just immediately starts beating the ever-loving crap out of Hawkman. Hawkman managed to put up a decent fight here, but he's just like, ah yes, Zarnian, you don't fight with honor. I do, how dare you. But as he's getting beat up by Lobo, he tells Alana to get all the rest of the aliens out of this room. This is their time to make an escape. So they start running to the door, and then they are immediately blocked by 2 Kund warriors, and just like, uh-oh. So back down on Earth, everyone's trying to figure out how to beat the giant genetic monster thing that is currently made of fire. And Stargirl goes in and blasts it with her cosmic staff, which turns it into a rock monster instead. And just like, all right, that's weird. So Green Arrow goes to like throw a punch at it, or sorry, shoot an arrow, when all of a sudden the giant monster comes at it with a giant fist. And Animal Man jumps in the way to manage to get him out of the way of it, but then Adam ends up falling down into the big hole in the ground that they uncovered before, and as he lands down there, he finds a bunch of suits with jetpacks, and so he throws one on, and now he's, as you know him, Adam Strange. And he flies up and he gets his ray gun ready to shoot the monster. He's like, I got this, guys, I'll help. And then he can't control the jetpack, so he just goes flying wildly off into the woods, and just like, all right, well, that's enough of that. So Stargirl blasts it again, and it starts turning into an electric-based monster, which then starts shocking everybody. Animal Man transforms using the powers of Electric Eel, and Green Arrow's just like, Jesus, that's so stupid. You're so stupid, Animal Man. He's just like, hey, it worked, didn't it? So at that point, Martian Manhunter realizes, like, okay, every time you blast that thing, it destabilizes it and changes, like, its material. So just keep blasting it, keep it distracted. I'm going to try to get into its mind. And so he does so, and inside he sees when the monster was made, it was made up of a bunch of different genetic stuff, and the scientists say that it's a failure, but they're going to keep it in containment anyway because it could be useful later. And as the monster realizes his mind's being read, he grabs hold of Martian Manhunter and drags him inside of him. So Stargirl, trying to get Martian Manhunter out, blasts the monster again. It now changes into a giant wind thing and then just starts bolting across Canada. Just full tilt, full speed. And so Stargirl's like, hey, I gotta go deal with that. You guys just catch up when you can. So she flies off. And Animal Man's like, hey, she's just a teen. Should we, like, be letting her? And Green Arrow's like, no. She's a Justice Leaguer. So then we cut back to Alana. And she's looking at the Coon guards and just, like, asking the other aliens, like, do they have the same anatomy as humans? And they're like, I don't know. So she kicks it in the nuts, and the Coon warrior doubles over and just like, well, I guess so. So she grabs one of their guns and shoots it in the head. And as she runs out into like a main room, all the other aliens get trapped behind a door, and she is face to face with Adam. And Adam's just like, oh, hey, Alana, great to see you. Don't be scared. So we cut back to Hawkman, who's still fighting against Lobo, and he's trying to ask questions, get information. Lobo's like, nah, I'm not going to give you any of that, but I am going to do this. And he cuts off Hawkman's right arm, like at the elbow, give or take. So that's the thing. We see Green Arrow and Animal Man are trying to make their way to where they saw Adam Strange fall into the forest. He's managed to pick himself up. He's like, yeah, no worries about it. This armor stuff protected me. Like, I've just got a few scrapes. No big deal. And he's like, cool. So Stargirl took off way fast that way. Are you able to fly that thing? Do you have control of it? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm getting the hang of it now. I should be able to fly. And Animal Man turns to Green Arrow and be like, you know what this means? If we're going to fly, I'm going to have to carry you. And Green Arrow's like, this is literally the worst day of my life. So Stargirl gives chase. Apparently they cover half of Canada. At least Stargirl guesses, because she doesn't know geography. And there haven't been any casualties, but they're very quickly approaching a harbor town. So she's like, all right, time to make a big move now to save all those lives. This is what it really counts. And so she goes in. She still has a mild psychic link with Martian Manhunter after the events of Justice League of America. And she sees him inside, and she's just like, hey, John, wake up. I got you. And Martian Manhunter's like, I saw into its mind. It's nothing but chaos. So I can't do anything to that. And so she's like, no big deal. So they manage to make their way out of the monster as it starts attacking the town. And Manhunter's just like, okay, we both keep trying to attack it independently. Let's try to attack it together. And I can't use my mental powers. So instead, I just need something that I can beat up. So give me something corporeal that I can punch. So she zaps it. It turns into a water monster. She zaps it again. It turns into a hair monster. She zaps it one more time. It turns into a wood monster. And he's like, good enough. So he punches it as hard as he can, and it just shatters into a million pieces. Stargirl runs up, gives him a hug, just like, hey, we did it. We beat it together. We did it. And Martian Manhunter's like, cool, where's the rest of the group? And she's like, oh, the rest of the Justice League? They'll catch up. I told them to take their time. So they all come up. And Animal Man's like, did you say we were Justice League? Because that's awesome. I've been waiting for that for so long. I'm so happy to be part of the Justice League. So Manhunter looks over and sees the monster's already reconstituting itself. Green Arrow gets ready with an explosive arrow, but then all of a sudden, they get teleported somewhere. And as they look up in the sky, they see this massive city with 3 moons above them, and they're like, okay, we're clearly somewhere else. And a little text box says that we are in the deserts of Nagalis, which is the capital city, east of Ranagar, the capital city of planet Ran. So, we're on Ran. We cut back to Alana, who's still talking to this fake Adam Strange. And he's just like, oh, hey, yeah, I just showed up here. By the way, Alana, if you ever try to escape again, I'm going to slit your goddamn throat. And she's like, you're not Adam. And so he starts de-transforming into his original thing. Lobo walks in with Hawkman, just bleeding out all over the place, and he's like, hey, I dealt with this one, go do whatever you want with him. And Alana looks at all this and is just like, who are you people, what's going on? And the not Adam Strange de-transforms into the character Bith and says, I've taken the DNA of all these alien species, all these prisoners, and I've combined them into this little blue baby, and I will call him Ultra, the multi-alien, the slayer of worlds. So I think we already saw the little blue baby in the Zero issue. I think it had like a big Dr. Manhattan looking blast of light or something. I don't know. Again, it's fine. It's solid. I like the humor in the book. Jeff Lemire always has a good handle on his characters. I don't think there's any real problem there. I'm not sure. We still feel like we're in the getting the team together sort of phase. And like, oh, of course they're going to beat back whatever monster alien is going to be trying to destroy the world or whatever. I'm fine with that. I'm cool with it. But at this point, I do hope that they either give us a curveball or pick up the speed a bit, because it feels like we're already there. The team is already made. If you got to make me like them a little bit more, so be it. But like, half the people here, Manhunter, Stargirl, kinda Hawkman, and Green Arrow, we're all already on the Justice League of America. So the only ones we're adding are Animal Man and Adam Strange. And that's like, that shouldn't take a whole arc to make that team come together. So pick up the pace a little bit. But beyond that, I think it's a solid one. I'm going to give it a 7.5, and we'll see what comes up next time. World's Finest number 23, written by Paul Levitz, art by R.B. Silva and Yildiray Cinar. So, last issue, Helena and Karen came to the conclusion that they could actually get home, and so all of their focus is now solely on figuring that out. And we see that after Karen has told her entire lab, most of her lab, she's got one single laboratory left over. She's now given up on trying to hide her powers and just like, all right, this is going to go faster if we don't have to wait for a crane. So she's just moving around all this heavy lab equipment, flying it around and heat visioning it into place. And she's just telling all of her staff, like, yeah, okay, I'm a superhero. Everyone get over it. Let's just hurry up and get this stuff done. And we're introduced to Tanya Spears, who is, I guess, her new assistant to some extent. And as she is welding stuff into place and, like, getting everything put in, Tanya's like, wow, Miss Star, you're on fire. And she's like, oh, thanks, I really am trying. And then Tanya says, no, actually, you're on fire. Your heat vision sparks got caught. So she puts that out real quick. And then we get the lead doctor, I guess, lead scientist named Dr. Gerhard, who has a very thick German accent. And he's like, yeah, no, everything looks good. Let's start it up. So they start up this test to open up the portal, and immediately the power goes out. And we see that Desaad, over in a secret compound, it doesn't say whether it's on Earth or not, senses like, wait a minute, something's going on. And he realizes it's in Boston, so he's going to go and have some fun with that. But as Karen uses her X-ray vision to look around the city, turns out the entire city of Boston had its power knocked out because of the amount of power they were trying to draw for this portal. So it's like, all right, that sucks. So we cut over to MIT, where Helena is, and I guess she was trying to steal something. It says that she was like trying to burgle, and it's something at the research reactor, like a power generator. So she says it wasn't me who caused the blackout, and then she's like, well, you know, things are going to be a little bit crazy. I shouldn't be sticking around here because this is a sensitive area and the campus police are going to show up. So she starts to leave. Meanwhile, some other random group led by a guy named Bolin are trying to steal the exact same thing, I guess. They're breaking into MIT's reactor because they're like, we've been planning this for so long. This blackout's a sign. We got to go ahead and do it now. So they bust in. And they're saying stuff about like, oh, the Americans are, it's an international thing. They're just trying to steal it. So as they're moving down, they draw some guns. They see some movement and they start firing at it, leading to most likely killing a security guard. Helena hears the shots being fired and she's like, all right, well, I need to go see what that's about. So she runs back into the reactor, sees these 3 guys stealing stuff from inside. And she's like, well, that ain't going to fly with me. So she starts disarming them one by one. She manages to get 2 of them down, but one of them manages to escape. So Helena gives chase. Meanwhile, Karen is like, okay, we may have knocked out all the power to Boston, but I'm going to go down to their nuclear reactor center, and I'm just going to give it a little extra push. I'm going to help them get back online here. So she flies her way down there. Apparently, the military is just sitting outside waiting, and as soon as they see her flying in, they just open fire. And Karen's like, guys, seriously, I'm trying to help. I get it. You think I'm causing trouble or whatnot, but I'm not. Because apparently the military's been hearing chatter about terrorist groups stealing nuclear stuff. So obviously they just thought this was the correct place. But Karen's like, look, it's not me. I'm just going to go in and check on this. You guys just do whatever you got to do, as they just keep on firing at her. So then we go to a bridge between Cambridge and Boston, and Miss Spears, Tanya, is walking her way home, and she's like, I really should have waited till this blackout was done. That was stupid of me. But as she's crossing the bridge, she sees Desaad just as a hooded figure, and Desaad's like, Miss Tanya Spears, come to me. I welcome you with open arms. And Tanya's like, piss off, creep. I don't talk to strangers in the dark. And she just pushes through Desaad, who then turns into like a ghostly apparition and just dissipates. And Tanya's like, I swear to God, ever since I started working for Karen, she's like, my whole life has been so much weirder. I think she's dosing us. So all of a sudden a car comes screeching up behind her on the bridge. Turns out it's Helena, Huntress, on the top of it, whereas the guy inside is the terrorist who was trying to steal nuclear stuff. She manages to jam her crossbow in through the guy's window, causing him to swerve and crash into the side of the bridge right next to where Tanya is. So he jumps out, has his gun, manages to bash Tanya upside the head, and is now using her as a hostage, telling Helena, back off or else we'll jump and this girl's going with. So that's the issue. It's a really fast read. I read this digitally, so I know it has the proper page count. Like, I was looking at it, but I couldn't believe it because it read so quickly. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's a fine enough issue. I do know that Tanya Spears becomes a larger character later on, so looking forward to that at the very least. But yeah, I mean, this kind of just feels like the series always has a collection of, and then they do this, where now we've decided that the arc direction is they are 100% definitively trying to build the portal to get home. And then the power goes out. Like, it's just more little things to pop in their way, and I'm sure it'll resolve itself through a series of weird little happenstances or whatnot, but it's just the same as it always has been. So overall, I think I'm just going to give this one an average, 6. It's nothing bad, it's nothing great, it just is what it has been for the entirety of the series. Constantine number 14, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Edgar Salazar. So last issue ended with Constantine getting called by a house that was on fire, and this issue picks up pretty much exactly with that. So we go to Arizona, where we meet 2 women named Lena and Priscilla. And Lena's got a bad feeling about this, but Priscilla goes inside of this shack, and then as soon as she gets in, she's like, wait a minute, hold on. I burned this place, but it's not supposed to be here. And then all of a sudden the place catches on fire, and Priscilla burns inside of it. So Lena just starts running. She walks off into the middle of a road a few hours later, and of course Constantine's there in his car, just like, hey, hop on in. I'm looking for a shack out in the middle of a desert. And so Lena leads him there, and the shack's gone. There's no trace of it at all. And she's like, am I going crazy? It's just like, nah, the shack just moved. It just does that. No big deal. We'll figure it out. It's going to call both of us again. And she's like, why? And it's like, because it's magic. So she says, Constantine offers to drop her off wherever. And she's like, my friend died in that fire. I'm coming with you. And he's like, all right, whatever. So he tries to do the friendlies, introduce himself and all that. And she's just not doing that at all. She's like totally shutting it down, and it's just making it all about her friend. And she's like, okay, well, tell me, did Priscilla ever, commit arson? And Lena's like, have you? That's such a weird question to ask. Why don't you just ask if someone, are you a cop? And he's just like, no, I am not a cop. So At that point, they stumble across the shack again, and Constantine's basically like, all right, I'm going to go check this out. You stay out here, and if you see me burning alive, just go ahead and leave, because that's definitely going to be the end of it. So he goes in, Lena tries to stop him, and he's just like, nah, sorry, gotta. So as soon as he steps inside, all of a sudden the interior of the shack is that of Constantine's childhood home. And he's like, no way, there's no way this is. So he hears the voice of his mother from the other room, and Constantine's like, nah, this has got to be fake. So he pulls out a little totem to make sure that this isn't an illusion. It says that it isn't, and he's like, what the hell's going on? And then all of a sudden, the room starts whirring around him. It's, some psychic energy or whatnot. And he collapses down on the ground, and he's like, okay, I know it's a trick. My mom's not in here. Just focus on that. And as he looks up, he sees the shack is completely burnt out now, and there's just tons of dead bodies and, skulls and stuff in there. And Lena can see him now just being like, what in the world is happening? And he's like, don't worry about it. Just don't come in here because there's something else in here with us. And as he says that, a giant Native American man with ghostly makeup appears behind him and just starts beating him down into the ground. So then we stop the story for a second. We go over to the Cult of Cold Flame, where Tanorak's talking to Sargon. And they're basically saying, yeah, hey, during the end of last issue, whatever, we made a whole thing of using Papa Midnight's stuff in order to get control of Constantine. We can kill him and destroy him if need be. And Sargon's like, all right, but we didn't need to make that deal. And Tanorak's like, let me show you something that's going on in the world right now. Because of Project Thaumaton, because of Forever Evil Blight, magic's so crazy out of whack right now that around the world, all of these magical creatures are just spawning up. The things that were normally kept contained and on the other side of the horizon are just messing around with humanity. So this is going to cause chaos and war, and that's where we're finally going to take our step, and we're going to get in here. Your dad saw that coming. This is what we're doing. And at that point, Sargon gets upset because I guess they need to use Constantine for this. He's going to do a specific task, and then they need to kill him quickly before he can undo it. And Sargon's like, well, you should have told me that we needed him because I just sent him to go face the Spellbinder. And Tanorak's like, ooh, yeah, he's probably crazy by now. Uh-oh. And then Sargon just makes the point saying yeah, my dad used to love him. I did too, but then I killed my dad, so whatever. So we go back to the Constantine story. And turns out the Native American man is a spirit, demon, something like that. And he's calling out Constantine for being a murderer, somebody who's killed by burning somebody. And that's what all of the callings were for, that whenever somebody committed arson and killed somebody in the process, this spirit is the vengeance against them. So Constantine doesn't let up. He's just like, yeah, hey, if you want to talk to my mom or whatever, go ahead, dig her up. She's nothing but a pile of bones right now. And that pisses off the spirit enough. He tries to crush Constantine underneath his boot, and Constantine gets out of the way and uses a knife the same knife that Mr. Reason, that's got mystic energy, and stabs it down into his foot so he's unable to move. And so he gets away. It's just all right, here's the deal. I'm going to hold you in place until I can figure out what in the world's actually going on with you. And the guy just starts belting out anger at him. He's like, I'm going to burn you alive and you're going to scream and die some more. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So at that point, Constantine says all right, time to listen up. And then he uses some sort of magic or something, the spirit does, in order to get a hold of Constantine. And he's like, okay, all right, this needs to go a bit faster now. And Constantine starts, as he starts burning Constantine, he's saying, look, it wasn't my fault. It was my parents. My parents died in the fire, but I swear it wasn't me. And we get a little flashback to young Constantine in the fire, basically saying that something showed him the magic on how to do this and said he'd be a great wizard, but it never told him about the sacrifice of magic or the cost of magic. And because he didn't realize that, he was safe inside this burning building as his parents died. And so Constantine just yells oh, it didn't tell me. Are you happy now? That's you want to see your innocent, your beloved, because he realizes that this spirit is only seeking vengeance because someone he loved also died in a fire. So his head is turned by Constantine. They look outside the shack, and there standing there is Lena, who apparently is also part of the spirit thing. She is being drawn to this stuff, but they were never able to see each other until Constantine showed each other to them. So Lena runs into the fire to be with her beloved and just says, "Oh, I'm so happy to be with you again. Here I am." And seemingly they both burn as Constantine manages to escape. So as they burn, Constantine gets his sword up out of the embers, and Mr. E starts talking to him, just being like, "Hey, that was pretty smart of you. You did a pretty good job there. Also, crazy that you killed your own flesh and blood. I didn't know that part of your backstory." And Constantine's like, "All right, what do you want, Mr. E? What's up?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I just wanted to give you a little hint. After all, if you're going to be trying to take down the cult of the cold flame, you need some help, don't you?" And he's just like, "Yeah, well, why are you telling me this?" It's like, "Oh, well, I mean, maybe you'll think more kindly of me once all of this is over if I help you out along the way." And so he tells him where his next thing is, and that is there is a witch by the name of Graceful Moon out in Hong Kong, and she is able to tell him everything about both himself and the cult of the cold flame. So to Hong Kong we go. It seems like this issue's kind of giving the explanation as to what's going to be the arc moving forward, and that is a collection of just weird and trippy stuff. Because as much as the Spellbinder stuff was explicitly trippy, this one also was just a little bit hard to follow, like the narrative of like how things were going on. And obviously that's because we're dealing with memories and flashbacks and guilt and whatnot. It makes sense, but I think that that's kind of just going to be the marching order for this whole arc, is that we're looking into Constantine's inner demons. We're looking into the self-dive and seeing why he is the way he is. So I'm all right with that from a conceptual point of view. I just hope that I can like understand it on a quick read, because I'm reading a bunch of comics. If this is one that I'm going to have to double back on and reread each time to make sure I understand the whole thing, that just, I don't know. That may be good from like oh wow, this is going to be like an all-timer sort of story, but like I'm just doing this for the show. So all in all, I think it is solid, but I do think it could be a little bit easier to understand. I'm still going to go ahead and give it a 7, just shy of that 7.5. It's, again, doing fine. I just want to see what all it's going to result in, and maybe just make it a little bit simpler for dum-dums like me. Batman Eternal number 6, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Layman, and Seeley, art by Trevor McCarthy. So this issue opens up with Batwing being attacked by Gentleman Ghost. He's just falling out of the sky as Gentleman Ghost is attacking him. Batman sees the scuffle going on as he falls down to the ground, and so Batman comes over and throws a batarang that just disapparates Gentleman Ghost. And Batwing's like, "Hey, Batman, what was that about? This dude just showed up. He didn't show up on any of my sensors, and he's just, what was that?" And he's like, "Oh, that was Gentleman Ghost. Don't worry about it. I took him out with an nth metal batarang. He should be gone until the next new moon. Anyway, what's going up with your research?" And Batwing's like, "I'm sorry, are you saying ghosts are real? Because that's nutty." And Batman just tells him, "Get over it. Gotham's like that. What's going on, though, with your mission?" And he says, "Yeah, all right, I was checking out Falcone's, like, trucks and stuff. You're right. They're all being loaded up for war. There's some crazy stuff going on here." And Batman's like, "Cool, awesome, thanks." So underneath the ground, we see a tiny little, I don't know, pinpoint of light, and turns out that leads down into this underground area where we don't get a name for the character, but I'm like 95% sure it's Dr. Phosphorus. And we see him walking around, and everything he touches leaves this like green flame on as he's just maneuvering through the underground of Gotham. So we cut over sometime later to the Batcave, and Alfred's coming down to talk to Bruce. He's like, "Hey, one of your friends is here. He's creeping me out." And Bruce is like, "Oh, who could be up there that's scaring you this much?" And as he gets up there, we see that it is Jim Corrigan, a.k.a. the Spectre. He's in his human form, and he's just sitting in an armchair reading some books, drinking some wine. And he's like, "Oh, Bruce, you changed back into your civilians. Don't worry about it. I know you're Batman. Like, you don't have to pretend for me or whatever." And Bruce just sits down next to him, just being like, "It's no big deal. What's going on? Why are you here?" And he's like, "Well, I wanted to let you know there's some crazy spirit stuff going on in Gotham recently, like more than usual. Have you been out to Arkham recently?" He's like, "No, I've kind of been busy with this whole gang war thing. And he's like, right. Well, here's the thing. If a gang war happens, there's going to be a lot of death, which is going to lead to a lot of spooky stuff happening. And it's all happening at Arkham. So I'm just like, I can handle it. I'm just letting you know that it's going down in case you start seeing some crazy stuff in your city. He's like, oh yeah, totally. Hey, I can give you one of the Bat family members if you want to like take it with you. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. That'd be great. Who do you have in mind? So we cut over to Arkham. And we see there is a inmate. I don't think it's anyone important, but he's been having bad dreams about a maze covered in a million handprints, and in the middle of it, there's this screaming from this horrible thing. And he's telling this to his doctor, and the doctor is just leading him down deeper and deeper into Arkham Asylum's like depths until finally they walk by like this dude who has multiple limbs cut off being treated by nurses who also have limbs cut off. And the doctor's like, okay, I'm not your real doctor. The drug I gave you just beforehand is going to make you obey me. And so I'm telling you, walk ahead of me and go and meet whoever's in that next room. And the guy's like, no, I don't want to do it. The guy's name is Martin, by the way. He's like, no. And he's like, okay, you're going to keep doing it anyway. He's like, I guess I am. So he walks into the room and he sees this horrific thing, and the doctor tells whoever's in the middle of the room, this guy's been having the dream lately. It's in heavy detail, so he might have potential. Do you want to check him out? And we see that the person sitting upon a throne surrounded by chopped up limbs is the Joker's daughter, who says, do what we normally do, cut off an arm of his and throw him into the maze to see what he comes out as. So says me, Princess of Dreamland, a.k.a. Joker's daughter. So we go to Luke Fawkes' apartment. He's just trying to mess with like a cell phone, give it some extra boost or something like that. When all of a sudden, him and his roommate are just sitting there and an explosion goes off across town. Huge explosion. He's like, what the hell was that? His phone starts ringing. It's Batman. And he's like, yeah, Batman, I saw the explosion. I'm on my way. I'm going to be right there. He's like, no. I got that one handled. You're going on a special assignment. I need you to report to Arkham Asylum and meet up with an old friend of mine. And Batman's like, you have friends? So he goes to Arkham and he meets up with Jim Corrigan. And Corrigan's like, hey, cool to meet you. Hold on to this. And he passes over like a little fern or something like that, a bag of magic stuff. And he's like, okay, what's this? And then Spectre just starts throwing around some magic incantations, saying that he's shielding Batwing for what's about to come. And then he's like, cool. What did Batman tell you is going on here? He's like, well, he says that you are like number one occult dude, and I have to listen to whatever you say, even if it sounds absolutely crazy. He's like, right. And he's like, also, you have a divine spirit inside of you. Does that mean like you're a born-again Christian? He's like, no, I have an actual literal divine spirit inside of me. He's like, cool. Also, he said that if I ever see you like smoke coming from your mouth, that I just need to run away because I don't want to see what happens next. And Jim's like, yeah, that about covers the basics. Ready to go into Arkham? And Batwing's like, okay, yeah, sure. So cut over to Gotham sometime later, and Batman is talking to Alfred saying, Falcone has not made a major strike yet. It feels like he's just testing all the defenses. Like, something big is going to happen soon, though. And Alfred says, okay, well, that last explosion happened at a cafe, so I don't know how much bigger you're going to want to happen, but hopefully we can figure that out. And apparently one of Batman's alerts goes off that there was a explosion somewhere, and one of the trucks that Batman tagged was fleeing from the scene. So Batman's like, all right, I'm going to go check that out. And Alfred's like, maybe you're pulling yourself a little bit thin right now. You need to get some rest at some point. He's like, I'll get rest once I stop Falcone. That is like more important than anything else right now. So we see him going across town, trying to track down this truck. Meanwhile, inside the truck, I believe at least inside, is Dr. Phosphorus, who is next to a whole bunch of flammable chemical barrels. And he's like, all right, get ready, get set. And then as the panels just start winding down one to one, he says now. And then right in front of Batman, the truck just explodes in this massive, just truly huge explosion. And that's where we leave off. Solid. I like it. I remember very vaguely the Arkham Asylum plot, more so that Batwing is just like way in over his head when it comes to all the occult stuff. So I'm actually really looking forward to that plot. I remember enjoying it a lot. that is counterbalanced by Joker's daughter showing up, which, God bless them that they're trying. I really understand the urge to try to make a new character work, but like, don't. Please stop. I hated it in Catwoman, and I'm hating it now. So, yeah, it's a little bit here and there, but I think it's a good start to Luke Fawkes' run. And even if you weren't ever reading Batwing, I think it gives you enough about his character, of him like trying to hack his phone and him trusting his sensors and whatnot, that you can get a general understanding for it. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5, and I look forward to next week's, whatever it may be covering. Future's End number 2, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Giffens, and Jurgen, art by Jesus Marino. So last issue we had Terry McGinnis arriving back at the wrong point in history, and then Firestorm showed up too late to an emergency and Green Arrow was killed. So we open up 5 years from now, which the whole story is going to be, so I don't know why they have to clarify that, but we see Firestorm is going to Green Arrow's funeral, and Jason Rush is inside of Ronnie's head, just tearing him a new one, just being like, it's all your fault, and you should know that, all because you were trying to sleep with someone, you're the worst, you're the reason Green Arrow's dead. And he's just like, all right, whatever, man, I'm here for the funeral. We then go inside of Mr. Terrific's limo, where he's asking what's trending on, I assume, Twitter right now. And it's all hashtags for Green Arrow. Some of them are respectful, some of them not so much, like hashtag Green is the new dead. And so Mr. Terrific's like, all right, we're close enough. I'm going to get myself onto trending now. So he steps out. Immediately, all the cameras turn to him. And just like, oh, Mr. Terrific, did you know Green Arrow was so beloved to get all of these people here today? And he's just like, not while he was alive. And someone calls him out on it, and Mr. Terrific's basically like, look, here's the thing. Yes, I did not see eye to eye with Oliver Queen all the time, but him coming out as Green Arrow is what brought me to own up to my own secret identity. I have come out to the public and I've done good under my actual real name here, and I am here to pay my respects to the man who allowed me to do that. And also I gave $10 million to his foundation. So shut up, all of you. And he just leaves it at that. So he goes into the group where Aquaman's standing behind the barricade, and Aquaman's kind of just like, well, you just had to get in front of the cameras, didn't you? You never miss a chance to do that. And Terrific doesn't even, barely lets him speak from this point on. He just goes off on a thing just being like, you're just jealous because I turned down being in the Justice League to work on my own. You hate that I'm succeeding where you never could on your own. And Aquaman's like, we have always been supportive. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Piss off, Aquaman. I don't need you. And he looks around at all the heroes that are gathered here, and he's like, you're lucky I'm not a villain, because if so, this is like shooting fish in a barrel. So we then go to Terry, Batman Beyond, who is arrived back here, and he's asking his Alfred AI, like, all right, give me the scoop, what's going on? And they say that the Brother Eye satellite is in orbit, but it is inactive ever since the quote-unquote war. And their job now is just to make sure that it stays inactive, to make sure it never comes back on. So Terry's like, all right, what are we looking for? And he's like, oh, clues, obviously. We're going to find clues as to what we could do to get in here, like any good detective. And Terry's like, I'm not a detective. I'm a soldier. Just tell me where to punch and I'll punch. So we then go back to the funeral, and we see all the superheroes are arriving, and they're all there to pay their respects. Animal Man gets up and gives the eulogy, and he basically just walks through, like, what happened in this in-between time? And we show he first met Green Arrow as part of Justice League United, and he hated him at first, but over time they were growing to be best friends, and they went on tons of adventures, and Oliver Queen was always one of the, normal people. Even when he was on superhero stuff, he always had his heart on the streets. And he obviously lost his fortune, but then got it back, and then he used that new fortune in order to help other people always. And apparently there was the war that they are talking about is that Apocalypse chased the survivors from Earth 2 onto Earth 1. And as such, there was this problem where there was now a whole new world of people here that were not supposed to be here. And Oliver was very much on the side of people are people, don't divide, just unite, let them be here as refugees or whatever. So he always protected his city, always did what he had to, and he was always a good person. Animal Man is very sad to say goodbye to him. So then we cut over to the police HQ in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I believe it has something to do with the crime scene that Grifter was at in the last issue. And we see that there's a federal agent there from the FBI doing research while a normal cop's just like chatting him up. And then the federal agent's just like, can you just leave? You're very annoying and I don't want to talk to you. And so the cop gets pissed off, but he storms out. And then we see the Fed turn on a headset, a little earbud piece. And it turns out he's not actually a Fed, or it doesn't seem like he actually is. He is King Faraday. That is the name he's going by, which does sound familiar, but I don't know. I think that went back to Checkmate stuff in the 90s. I'm not familiar. But regardless, he plugs in a USB drive that just corrupts all the case files relating to this. But not before whoever he's talking to, he basically says, yeah, there was nothing here. He went in, he went out. There's nothing I could really trace down to him. So that's all there's got to be. So he corrupts the files, and then he demands a teleport out. And so he walks right in front of the cops and then just teleports out in front of them. And the cops are like, Jesus Christ, what? The federal government just teleported out of here. So at that point, whoever he's talking to on the other side, he's just like, yeah, that's, a mission's a mission. I'm not that concerned about it. But how about you go ahead and update me as to where Grifter is? So obviously he's on the hunt for Grifter. We see back at the funeral, a whole group of people are taking the coffin of Oliver to the hearse, and we cut to a bar that called the Wounded Duck, and the bartender's like, screw this, I don't want to watch any of the superhero stuff. But one of the bar his patrons is like, no, please keep it on, I want to see it, they're heroes after all. And the bartender's like, they all suck, they all have secrets and they all have skeletons, don't ever trust a hero. So as the coffin gets loaded into a hearse, Arsenal says, like, man, you're never able to get over a close friend like that. And Firestorm's like, yeah. And then Arsenal just loses it. He's like, how dare you agree with me? You think you're a close friend of Oliver Queen? Well, let me tell you, bub, he called you and you didn't show up for a goddamn hour later. And Firestorm, Jason's in his head just being like, don't, just let him rant. Don't say anything. You'll only make it worse. But Ronnie can't help himself. And he's like, I was doing another emergency. And that's when Flash comes in. He's like, no. We are able to track your energy signature and whatnot. And we ran it back. You did not transform for nearly an hour afterwards. It was like 45 minutes. So you said you would be there and you weren't. So why are you lying about this now? He's like, you're saying I'm lying? Also, you're spying on me? How dare you? And Arsenal just keeps calling him out, saying like, nah, I'm straight calling you a fraud, a phony, and a coward. You are straight up just worthless as a hero. And some of the other heroes try to step in, break this up, but everyone's just like, okay, but this is healthy, so let's just let this be a thing already. So Arsenal's just like, yeah, hey, you're literally the worst. And Firestorm tells him, you keep saying that, I'm going to put you down. And he's like, yeah, you're going to do that? You think you easily could here? And then Arsenal just punches him in the face. And Jason still in his head is just like, let me out. I need to split up now. I will apologize. I will do the things that you are unwilling to do right now. And our Firestorm, Ronnie's just like, no, screw that. I'm not going to let you put me down. You're not going to throw me under the bus. So he's throwing punches at Arsenal. Meanwhile, this character that is wearing a mask, has on the Superman crest, steps up and stops Firestorm's fist and just says the word no. We're not told who this character is, but it's implied to be Superman. So at that point, Firestorm's like, all right, screw you all, I'm out, bye. And he just flies away. And Jason's in his head just like, you can't keep me prisoner here. You got to let me out. How dare you? He's like, nah, I'm never going to do that. So at that point, we see the bartender turn off the TV, and he's just like, see, they're all jerks. Every last one of them heroes. So then we cut over to the apartment of Lois Lane. She was at the funeral. She was in the front lines, and she's trying to write a story about Green Arrow. And she's just like, it's not coming to me. I don't feel like I have anything to say yet. The story's just not quite there. I got to trust my gut. And so she goes outside of her apartment. And by the way, she's left the Daily Planet. She's got a blog called The Fast Lane. Sure, why not? But she goes outside her apartment, and there's a box outside her door. So she opens it up, and inside is a green pyramid, a matchbox to that bar, the wounded duck, the tip of an arrow that's red, and then a note that has a bunch of numbers and says, Lois, go alone and trust no one else. So Lois says the real story's just starting. Yeah, feels that way. I mean, even to obviously there was always going to be a bit of subterfuge and like crazy plots and whatnot, but the last issue definitely felt like here's the very first inciting incident, and now we're starting to get all the sprawling network outside of that. We've got whatever's going on with Terry McGinnis, we've got whatever's going on with Lois now, whatever's going on with Firestorm. It's just going to keep on branching out, and we're going to see more and more of this world as we go. Obviously, Grifter's there as well, and whatever King Faraday's doing. So, whole bunch of moving parts. It definitely feels like it's got a handle on things right now. I will say there are a few things that I'm wondering how much are going to be left up to just inference, how much are going to be left up to just, yeah, that happened in the middle. This whole war thing between Earth 2 and whatnot, I mean, no spoilers or anything. We are getting a weekly in about, I think, 5 months' time of Earth 2 World's End, which may tie into this. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But all in all, it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. All in all, I'd say this issue is probably I'll give it a flat 7. I want to see where all this stuff sprawls out to, but it definitely doesn't feel like it has as firm of a grip as like Batman Eternal, which is also going on. So yeah, 7 for this. And that's it. That's all the comics put out by DC Comics this May 14th, 2014. And blah, 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 funny stuff. Just assume I said something of worthwhile here because I'm tired. I'm very tired. For those of you who don't know or are not American, I don't know if it's an international thing, but Mother's Day was on Sunday earlier this week. If you're just now remembering that, good luck to you. However, as such, I'm recording this especially early on than when I normally would because this weekend is just completely shot for me. So, as such, I am just trying to skate by this as much as possible. So, blah, 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 comic thing, DC, why are you giving me so much stuff to do? Because next week we've got 16 comics coming out. And what are those 16 comics? Well, I'll tell you. We have, in no particular order, Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batman/Superman, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Sinestro, Wonder Woman, Trinity of Sin, Pandora, our 2 weeklies of Eternal and for Future's End. And then, turns out, Jeff Johns actually still works at DC Comics. Not like now, present day. He actually super doesn't. But back in 2014, he theoretically did, and we decided to put out all of his comics all at once. So we have Justice League number 30, Justice League of America number 14, which now that I'm saying that is actually not him, but I have a feeling we were waiting on him because the last thing coming out is Forever Evil number 7, the finale to Forever Evil that multiple comics over this month and last have already moved on past. We've already moved into the post-Forever Evil timeline because this comic should have been out multiple weeks ago, but Jeff Johns, being Jeff Johns, just didn't. So finally we're having that, thank God, and we can finally move on to whatever's going on after that. Beyond that, there's only one event comic going on, and that is Batman/Superman is part of the Superman Doomed crossover, so be sure to check that out if you are interested. Beyond that, nothing of interest. So that's going to do it for me. If you have anything that you'd like to say about any of the comics I covered this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up on any form of social media, but more specifically the comments down below. If that doesn't suit your fancy, we have a subreddit, a Discord, and a Patreon that I kind of am allowed to check sometimes. I'm not in charge of that Patreon, and I don't see any money from that Patreon, but I'm contractually obligated to mention that Patreon. So I think I've done my due diligence there. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week and give this thing whatever positive reinforcement your platform of choice manages to do. Anyway, that's me. Tune in next time, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.